This isn't really a story about clothes. It's about how a kid with the, quote, wrong name from the wrong part of town with zero formal training managed to build a global empire. And he did it by selling a dream that first he had to build for himself. This is the story of how Ralph Lifshitz became Ralph Lauren. This quote right here, it gets to the very heart of the story. He wasn't born into this world of polo matches and sprawling country estates that he would one day come to define. No way. He was a total outsider who literally imagined it all into existence. This is the ultimate underdog story. So, let's get real. How does a boy from a shared bedroom in the Bronx end up owning a massive ranch out in Colorado? That's the incredible jump we're going to break down. It is a story of pure grit, of staring failure right in the face, and just this unshakable belief in a vision that honestly, nobody else could see. To really get the empire, you have to get the kid. His ambition wasn't cooked up in some fancy design school. It was forged right there on the tough streets of a New York City neighborhood. Okay, look at this. This reads like a checklist of disadvantages, right? He grew up poor, wore his older brother's hand-me-downs. He was bullied so relentlessly for his last name, Lifshitz, that he actually changed it to Lauren when he was just 16. And get this, he even dropped out of college. By any normal measure, this guy was not set up for success in the super elite world of fashion. Not at all. So where did this vision even come from? It wasn't from the runway. It was from the movies. He saw guys like Cary Grant and Fred Astaire living this life of incredible elegance and style, and he decided, I want that. So he started creating it for himself, beginning with the one thing he could actually make, a necktie. This wasn't some grand business plan. It was him trying to create the dream for himself. Every underdog story has that moment of rejection. And for Ralph Lauren, it wasn't just one person. It was the entire established industry telling him his dream was basically a joke. Can you even imagine hearing that from your own boss? You pitch your big idea, these wider, more expressive ties, and he just shuts you down completely. But here's the thing, Ralph didn't quit. He decided, okay, if the world isn't ready, well then I'm just gonna have to make it ready. This moment right here could have ended his career before it started. The big leagues, Bloomingdale's, they wanted his ties, but only if he compromised. Make them narrower, they said, and take your little Polo name off of them. Now he's just this small-time designer, and he said no. He actually walked away from a massive guaranteed deal because he believed in his vision. And what happened? 6 months later, they came crawling back, and they didn't just give him a rack, they gave him his own boutique inside the store. He bet on himself, and man, did it pay off. But winning that first battle was just the beginning. See, with rapid success came a whole new, even scarier challenge. The very real risk of losing every single thing he built. And here's the part they don't tell you in the success stories. This wasn't some smooth, perfect ride to the top. The company grew way too fast, they completely mismanaged the money, and the entire dream was about to crash and burn. He was literally on the verge of bankruptcy. And to save the company, he had to put it all on the line, $100,000 of his own money. This wasn't some corporate bailout. This was a deeply personal, all-or-nothing bet on his own dream. You see, it wasn't just about the money. It was that gut-wrenching fear of failure, the fear of having to disappoint his family, of having to call up his dad, a house painter, and tell him the dream was over. That's the real pressure that forges an entrepreneur. After surviving that near-death experience, you'd think he'd play it safe, right? Nope. It was the exact opposite. It was the catalyst to go even bigger. He realized he wasn't just selling clothes. He was selling that entire world he'd imagined back in his bedroom in the Bronx. He basically invented this whole concept. Before Ralph Lauren, you just bought a shirt. With Ralph Lauren, you were buying a piece of a story, a ticket into this world of timeless cool and sophistication. He was selling an identity, not just a product. And he built this world with such detail. His ads weren't just pictures of clothes, they were like little movie scenes from a life you desperately wished you had. He designed the costumes for The Great Gatsby, literally dressing the American dream on screen. Then he expanded into everything, paint, furniture, fragrances, making sure you could live inside his vision 24/7. So what does an underdog do once he finally gets to the top? Well, if you're Ralph Lauren, you don't forget where you came from. You use your new platform to help other people who are facing their own uphill battles. His own health struggles gave his work a whole new purpose. The fight against cancer became deeply personal for him, and he started putting his resources toward making sure other people, especially those in communities that get overlooked, had access to the care they needed. And you can see this clear pattern of him paying it forward. He starts the Pink Pony Initiative, which is huge, but then he goes and opens a cancer center specifically in Harlem, a community a lot like the ones he knew growing up. He creates scholarships for students at HBCUs. This isn't just random charity. It's a very clear pattern of helping other underdogs get their shot. And he says it best himself right here. He is confirming this evolution. The dream he built, which was once inspired by these old black and white movies, is now intentionally expanding to include a much more real, much more diverse picture of what America actually looks like. The underdog is now working to make the dream more inclusive for everybody. So I'll leave you with this thought. Your starting point does not have to be your destination. Ralph Lauren's Bronx was a place of poverty and being bullied, but it was also the very thing that fueled his greatest ambition. So it makes you ask yourself, right? What's your Bronx? What's your so-called disadvantage? And how can you turn it into your greatest strength?